As the end of the year drew close, the number of cultivators visiting Taishan Mountain was increasing, and many of those who had gone to cultivate in the outer realms had all begun to return. As the end of the year drew close, the number of cultivators visiting Taishan Mountain was increasing, and many of those who had gone to cultivate in the outer realms had all begun to return. On this day, Taishan Mountain was lively. Lord Taishuan's third disciple, String Emperor, had come from the String Palace to visit his master Lord Taishan, which caused many on Taishan Mountain to chatter. Moreover, many thought of Jing, the guardian of String Pavilion. Now that the String Emperor had returned, no one knew what he would think of Jing. If Jing's luck held up, maybe he could become a disciple of String Emperor. Soon after the String Emperor Qin went up to Taishan Mountain, Miss 4 of Taishan Tavern in Taishan City had also come back, which caused more chatter among the disciples of Taishan Mountain. Miss 4 and the String Emperor still enjoyed a great relationship. Every time the String Emperor appeared, Miss 4 would not be far behind. In the palace of Lord Taishan, there were bursts of hearty laughter. Those who heard it all sighed and thought Lord Taishan was probably only this merry when his disciples came to visit. There were many rumors that Lord Taishuan's favorite was Miss 4. Miss 4, who was the youngest and was the only woman among the 4 disciples, therefore she was naturally favored. Lord Taishan treated her like his daughter. The String Emperor was also younger and liked by Lord Taishan. Yi Futian cultivated in the String Pavilion this day and did not go to the Sword Abyss. He was the only one in the String Pavilion, so he was not very aware of the goings-on outside. At this time, he was still cultivating Guqin in the rear mountain. The quiet space, the misty sea of clouds, the sound of Guqin was melodious, beautiful, and had a strong penetrating power. Between the seas of clouds, there was a dazzling divine brilliance. It was gorgeous and radiant. A beautiful divine bird phoenix could be seen shuttling back and forth between the clouds in cultivation as if inspired to dance by the sound of Guqin. Flight of the Phoenix Pair was the piece Yi Futian played most often because it was helpful to Feng Yan. Although he didn't say anything and even often argued with her, Yi Futian still played this song once in a while to resonate with the little phoenix. Although the girl's habit of often calling her parents for backup had greatly annoyed him, he was not in the habit of arguing with children. The rhythm of Flight of the Phoenix Pair was extremely beautiful. As the song ended, its mood still lingered. Yi Futian's 10 fingers moved away from the strings as if he felt something. Suddenly he looked up. A middle-aged man clad in white fur stood there quietly. Without a trace of his breath, his whole person seemed to have blended into the space between heaven and earth. Yi Futian secretly shuddered. Someone had come near him and he did not even feel it. Yes, he was concentrating on playing the Guqin, but his realm was of a certain level. If the other had wanted to attack him, he would not have even known it, so one could only imagine the prowess of this person. Of course, anyone who could achieve this level had no need to resort to an ambush as he could kill him at will. Yi Futian got up calmly. He faced the middle-aged man in the white fur and bowed slightly. Jing, the guardian musician of the String Pavilion, greets the elder. The person who came here undetected was naturally a cultivator of Taishan Mountain, and a powerful Renhuang at that. His status in Taishan Mountain must be high above all others. Yi Futian had some idea who this person might be. Jing, the man repeated in a low tone, and Yi Futian nodded. He raised his eyes and looked at the other and saw that the man appeared to be in his 30s or 40s. He looked elegant and gentle with an excellent spirit and was very attractive. Such a temperament must be irresistible to women. In the distance, the sea of clouds rolled over, and a gorgeous divine light shone between heaven and earth. The 2 figures appeared directly in the sea of clouds not far from Yi Futian. It was the pair of divine birds, the phoenixes. Their eyes were fixed on the man. They said, "You have returned." Upon hearing their words, Yi Futian knew that his guess was correct. Their master had returned. The master of String Pavilion, the 3rd disciple of Lord Taishan, the String Emperor. The String Emperor nodded slightly only to see the little phoenix fly over in a hurry. Her beautiful eyes looked curiously at the String Emperor in front of her. "Feng Yan, where are your manners?" Next to her, her father prompted her, and the little phoenix came too and bowed. Feng Yan greets the String Emperor. She is all grown up. The String Emperor revealed a gentle smile. He looked at Feng Yan. His eyes were extremely gentle and kind. He had witnessed Feng Yan's birth and blessed her so that Feng Yan was born with a unique gift, a natural-born saint. Later on, he visited more infrequently and had not seen Feng Yan much. Now, in the blink of an eye, she was already growing up to be a fine young lady of the unblemished plain. At this time there were footsteps. The two phoenixes shifted their gazes there. They bowed again, saying, "Miss Four." Futian also looked over there. Not far behind the String Emperor, someone walked quietly this way. It was the house master of Taishan who had sent him to Taishan Mountain to cultivate in the first place. She exuded noble temperament, and her statuesque figure was somewhat seductive. "Elder," Futian bowed and said. The String Emperor turned to look at the house master of Taishan, whispering, "Junior sister." But the house master of Taishan didn't look at him. She walked right past by him, and her gaze landed on Futian. "How is cultivation on Taishan Mountain? Have you gotten used to it?" "It's been very good so far, and the disciples of Taishan Mountain have been taking great care of me." Futian nodded and added, "All thanks to you, elder." "Well," the housemaster of Taishan nodded, "all this talk of elder is making me feel quite old. Call me sister." Futian looked stunned. This was not right, it was very wrong. Although he had met the housemaster of Taishan once and also accepted a favor from her, when did their relationship become so intimate? Sister? Not exactly. This must be some kind of scheme. Many thoughts flashed past his mind in just a moment's time. Just then, the String Emperor had called out to the housemaster of Taishan, and she did not respond. Technically, the String Emperor was her senior brother, and her response was very unusual. The two possibilities could be that 1, they had a poor relationship, or 2, they had such a good relationship that common protocol did not apply. If it was very poor, then the housemaster of Taishan would not have come at all. And then, recalling Uncle Lan's initial attitude of sending himself here directly, Futian suddenly seemed to understand something, and there was a sense of enlightenment. Futian suddenly thought of the piece he had just played, The Flight of the Phoenix Pair. It was about the phoenixes traveling in pairs, and it had exceptional significance. When he considered this, Futian felt tense all over. This was tough. Did he dare to call her sister? Futian said nothing, panicking inside. "What? Do you think I'm old?" The housemaster of Taishan smiled softly and looking charming. She beautiful beyond description. In the world of cultivation, such a concept did not exist, especially for those whose status was of an empress, as they were eternally youthful. The charm of the empress was so attracted that no one could even imagine them to be that old. But the String Emperor was looking on right beside him. Without a clear picture of the relationship between the two, would he dare? If he got killed, he wouldn't even know how he died. "Don't joke with the likes of me." "I dare not," Futian replied honestly because he really dared not to do so. The housemaster of Taishan still looked at him with a smile, but now, there was a bit of contempt in those beautiful eyes. Futian was fine with that. He was perfectly willing to give up when necessary, his life was more important. "This is Jing, a musician in my tavern. Not only is he handsome, but his musical skill was of a high level, so I sent him here to Taishan Mountain. My original intention was to have him cultivate in Guqin Valley, but I didn't expect Uncle Lan to place him here." Just then, those beautiful eyes of the housemaster of Taishan turned to the String Emperor at her side. She said, "Since senior brother has returned, I will take him away." Jing, apologize. Futian was a little speechless. He did not believe that the housemaster of Taishan was unaware that Uncle Lan had placed him here. That day when she sent him, she went up the mountain to visit Lord Taishan while Uncle Lan sent him to the String Pavilion. At that time, she had not left yet. This was too hypocritical. Futian looked at the String Emperor, bowed slightly to pay his respects, and just as he was about to speak, the String Emperor spoke first, "Not necessary." Futian's body stiffened. He was caught in a dilemma. Since Uncle Lan put you here to cultivate, let's say it was fate. I don't come often, so it is good to have a musician to guard the pavilion for me. In the future, you should continue to cultivate here, the String Emperor said to Yi Futian. A lot of ideas came into Yi Futian's mind. If he continued to stay in the String Pavilion, would the String Emperor use that opportunity to secretly get his revenge? If it was because of that unspoken sister that he was now angry, it was truly unfortunate. Thank you, Elder. Yi Futian dared not reveal what he was actually thinking. He bowed to show his appreciation. But he is my person, the house master of Taishan said, looking at the String Emperor. Yi Futian wanted to die. He didn't deserve to be set up like that. Since when was he the person of the house master of Taishan? Then loan me your person to help me take care of the String Pavilion, and I will owe you a personal favor, the String Emperor said. Since senior brother has put it that way, then I'd be happy to oblige. The house master of Taishan smiled and said, Xinjing, from now on, you should guard the String Pavilion well. I understand. Yi Futian nodded. 3 days later, Master will speak at Taishan Palace, and all disciples of Taishan Mountain can go and listen. You should go with them. To listen to Lord Taishan speak. Yi Futian was slightly surprised, but he nodded and replied, Certainly. This was also a rare opportunity. Lord Taishan was a man of colossal intellect who knew all things from past to present. He was known as a legendary person in the higher heavens realm. After the house master of Taishan glanced at the String Emperor, she turned to leave without saying another word. This made Yi Futian quite confused about the two's relationship. But he always remembered Uncle Lan's words, speak less, observe more. So, very wisely, he kept his mouth shut. The String Emperor moved his step and walked to Yi Futian's side. His eyes fell on the Phoenix Guqin. Yi Futian wisely gave way so that the String Emperor could sit down in front of the Guqin. He stroked the strings with both hands. He whispered, I've not played it for a long time. As he was speaking, he plucked the strings with his fingers, and in a flash, the sound of the ethereal music was heard. It had a very strong penetrating power. The two Phoenix Demon Emperors soared, and gorgeous divine light was extremely bright, covering the String Pavilion. The sound of the Guqin gradually bloomed, piercing the sea of clouds. It penetrated Taishan Mountain. The sound of Phoenix chanting was crystal clear and resounded through the space. The two demon emperors danced above the sky, flying together. It was unbelievably spectacular. Yi Futian looked up into the sky, and all he saw was beauty. But what he felt in his heart was a faint sense of heartache. This was the beauty of the Guqin, the faint sorrow hidden within the beauty. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The music stopped within String Palace. The two empresses stood behind String Emperor, their hearts full of many different emotions. They had not been like this in a very long time. The music stopped within String Palace. The two empresses stood behind String Emperor, their hearts full of many different emotions. They had not been like this in a very long time. They had originally wanted to follow String Emperor when he left and went out into the world, but he had asked them to stay at Taishan Mountain. String Emperor looked up, his fingers still resting lightly upon the strings of his Guqin. He looked over at Yi Futian and asked, Which of the 6 songs is your favorite? Flight of the Phoenix Pair, answered Yi Futian. Why? Asked String Emperor. I think that music makes the emotions linger. It reflects the player's sorrow and joy, their pain and their pleasure. Only if they have deep feelings can they play with soul. Flight of the Phoenix Pair contains the deepest emotions of any of the songs, answered Yi Futian. Thus, I think that Flight of the Phoenix Pair is the best one of these 6 songs. String Emperor's gaze rested upon him, then slowly shifted. He looked at the Guqin that he had been playing and whispered, It does not make any sense to waste String Palace by keeping it for my return. From now on, if you see anything you like, you may take it, including these Guqins. There is no need to ask anyone for permission. Yi Futian was stunned when he heard this. String Emperor was giving String Palace to him. At first, he had entered Taishan Tavern while hiding his identity to come up to Taishan Mountain. He wanted to spend some time there cultivating, But everything that had happened afterward had gone surprisingly smoothly. The housemaster of Taishin had brought him up the mountain, and Uncle Lon had brought him to String Palace. And now, String Emperor was giving everything within String Palace to him. He was not sure what all of this meant. He was not even particularly excited by this prospect. He looked back at String Emperor. Would he really give away String Palace with a single sentence? Perhaps the housemaster of Taishin must have had something to do with this. But really, he was probably overthinking this. String Emperor was a powerful figure. Why would he care about the petty machinations of the housemaster of Taishin? There was nothing that he could do to hurt him. Thank you, Senior. Yi Futian bowed in thanks. Although he was not excited by this, he still would not refuse it. The two empresses stared deeply at him. This guy had not been on Taishin Mountain for very long and had already stolen so much. Now he had obtained String Palace. If the disciples of Taishin Mountain knew what he had gained today, they would not be so friendly towards him. The 10,030th year of the Divine Prefecture calendar drew to a close. On that day, Taishin Mountain, which was usually so peaceful, became quite lively. In addition to all the disciples who had returned from being abroad, the 4 great disciples of Lord Taishin were there as well, and they had brought many of their own disciples. On this day, Lord Taishin would teach the way. Everyone gathered together in front of Taishin Palace early in the morning. Although Taishin Mountain did not accept as many disciples as a lot of other places, there were still countless cultivators there. Cultivators from Guqin Valley, Sword Abyss, and other places were all gathered together. For a time, the area outside the palace was incredibly lively. Yi Futian also came quietly. He had come with Little Phoenix. Although he had met many powerful figures and had even been personally taught by the Divine Elephant Emperor, this was the first time he had attended a lecture in this style. This would probably be very helpful for his cultivation. In addition to the countless saint-level disciples, there were also some Renhuang-level figures there, sitting in the foremost seats. Yi Futian saw many familiar faces. The place that he knew the most disciples from was Sword Abyss. Some of them smiled and nodded when they saw him. Xinjing, came a voice. Yi Futian turned and saw a group of people walking up. At the front were Wan Shui and Princess Luoyue, as well as Deng Hu and the others who had fought at the ruins. The people from the city lord's office had all come. Yi Futian smiled and nodded at them. How has this period of cultivation been for you? Asked Wan Shui with a smile. Not bad, answered Yi Futian, but I am a little bit confounded whenever I practice swordsmanship. If we have a chance, I must ask you to teach me. Wan Shui nodded. That makes sense. It is the Guqin arts that you are skilled in. If you run into any difficulties, I can give you a few pointers. His words were modest yet confident. Thank you, said Yi Futian with a nod. Brother Xinjing, came another voice. He saw Ma Yi and his sworn sister of Taishin Tavern walking over. Ma Yi was interested in Princess Luoyue, and when he saw her and Wan Shui together, his face changed a bit. Sister Luoyue, he called. Brother, replied Luoyue. I never thought I'd see you here. The last time we were together was at Taishin Tavern, said Ma Yi with a smile. Xinjing, I haven't seen you since the Lord sent you up to Taishin Mountain. How has your cultivation been going? Very well, said Yi Futian with a smile. It makes me a little jealous how well they treat a Guqin master like you. Keep cultivating diligently, said Ma. Then he turned to talk to Luoyue. Without realizing it, he was soon standing next to her, and they were walking together. Yi Futian smiled to himself when he saw this. He was like an open book. Mei Yi was incredibly competitive, but this was not something that he needed to worry about. Xinjing, came another voice. A look of surprise came over Yi Futian's face. Since when had he been so popular here on Taishin Mountain? This time the people coming to welcome him were Li Jin and Qin Yu of Guqin Valley. Li Jin had played Flight of the Phoenix pair at String Palace. He was incredibly talented. Yi Futian smiled slightly and inclined his head. How has it been cultivating at String Palace? Which of the 6 songs are you best at? Asked Li Jin. Each of the 6 songs is deep and brilliant. I have only touched upon them as of now. I must put more effort into them all, said Yi Futian. None of the 6 songs are simple, and becoming specialized in one of them is no easy thing. If you want to learn a lot about one of them, then I am afraid it will be difficult to get good at all of them. Given this situation, your best chance is to choose one song and work on it diligently, said Li Xing. What you say is true, but given Xinjing's surroundings, I can't blame him. If I were in his place, I would want to study all the songs too, said Xinyu with a smile. Li Xin agreed. If she were cultivating at the String Palace, it would probably be the same. She would want to study all 6 of the songs. But this was incredibly difficult. Yi Futian smiled and nodded. Very well, I will keep that in mind. The others had no more to say, and so the people from Guqin Valley left him there. Yi Futian smiled ruefully. Would anyone else come and seek him out today? It seems like you are very popular on Taishan Mountain, Little Phoenix whispered to him. Yi Futian rolled his eyes. But although they're being polite to you, I can sense that there is another attitude as well, said Little Phoenix said gloatingly. They are very protective of String Palace. Yi Futian naturally understood this. He had entered Taishan Mountain under the guise of a Guqin master, and had kept things low-key, humbly concealing his skill. Thus, although the disciples of Taishan Mountain were polite to him, they did not respect him that much and did not look at him as an equal. But Yi Futian did not mind this. After all, this was the result that he had hoped for, and he had worked to create this effect. Otherwise, how would he be able to cultivate in peace? Great teacher and second teacher are coming, came an excited cry. Everyone made a path for them. The 2 of them were walking together. Everyone bowed to them, saying, Greetings, great teacher. Greetings, second teacher. They were the head teacher of Taishan Mountain and the city lord of Taishan City. The head teacher of Taishan Mountain stepped forward. His aura was exquisite, and there was a sense of majesty about him. He raised his hand and said, Today Lord Taishan will teach us the way, so there is no need to be so polite towards us. We have come here to listen to him, just like all of you. Yes, teacher. Everyone rose, but their gazes were still full of respect. Great teacher was such an important figure. His power was widely famed. It was said that he was on the same level as Lord Taishan, and was thus one of the most powerful figures in the higher heavens realm. Of course, no one was clear on exactly how strong he was. Not long after, String Emperor and the House Master of Taishan arrived, but not at the same time. One followed the other. String Emperor came first, and the House Master of Taishan came after. Most of the people there did not notice, but a few people understood what this meant. String Emperor walked to the front and bowed to the head teacher of Taishan and the city lord of Taishan City. Greetings, brothers. There is no need to be so polite, brother. Please sit, said the head teacher of Taishan Mountain with a smile. String Emperor nodded and sat down. The house master of Taishan said nothing, he just sat down beside them. The 4 personal disciples were sitting in the very front row. At that moment, a figure slowly walked out of the palace. In a flash, everyone stood up and bowed, including the 4 great teachers. Greetings, Lord Taishan, they all said. Everyone moved as one. The respect that they felt for him was plain on their faces. The fact that Lord Taishan was willing to teach them the way was enough to make him worthy of their respect. After all, in the face of a powerful figure like this, even saint-level people were little more than ants. Moreover, Lord Taishan would no longer take on new disciples. There was nothing that could be said to sway him on this. Thus, when he taught the way, the ones who were present would be the only ones to ever benefit from it. Please be seated, said Lord Taishan to everyone. Everyone took their seats, and Lord Taishan sat on a rush hassock in front of them all. Although Yi Futian had been cultivating at Taishan Mountain for a while, this was the first time that he had seen Lord Taishan. He had white hair, a white beard, and a cultivator's robe. He had the demeanor of a transcendent being, and he was so graceful that he seemed to not be of this world, but was rather a truly celestial being. Lord Taishan waved his hand, and suddenly a character was floating in the air in front of everyone. The way. The character was full of vigor and power as if it had been written in the air by an ink pen. What do you see here? Asked Lord Taishan. A character. The way, people answered. Is that all? Asked Lord Taishan. Everyone looked at the character with a confused expression. They did not understand. All they could see was a character that read the way. Could it be that this character held some mysteries? They all released their divine spirits and perceived the character in detail. But though they could see it floating there, they could not feel any unusual aura coming from it. The vast area became incredibly quiet. "When I teach the way to you today, I will only speak of this character here," said Lord Taishin. "Can no one see anything else?" Everyone was still silent. No one could answer Lord Taishuan's question. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." The people who were closest to Lord Taishin were naturally the 4 disciples that he taught personally. They looked at the character in front of them and sensed something. But they did not say anything. The people who were closest to Lord Taishin were naturally the 4 disciples that he taught personally. They looked at the character in front of them and sensed something. But they did not say anything. They were Lord Taishuan's personal disciples and had often heard their master teach. Today, the main focus was on the other disciples of Taishan Mountain. The character that read the way floated in the air above them. It looked normal but also abnormal at the same time. But no one could really say what was abnormal about it. Futian stared at the character as well, and his eyes slowly changed as his gaze grew deeper. In that vast space, the world all around him changed. He seemed to see endless beams of light floating between heaven and earth. The will of that character filled the air. He could see the changes of all things. What he was seeing was not a character, it was the way itself. However, he did not say anything. He just sat there quietly. Among all the disciples of Taishan Mountain here today, as a Guqin master, it was best if he said nothing. Although Futian said nothing, it seemed that, at that moment, Lord Taishan sensed something. He looked over towards Futian. Their gazes collided. Futian found himself looking into an infinitely deep pair of eyes, so deep that they seemed to be filled with the way. But the feeling disappeared in an instant. He immediately averted his gaze, but he heard Lord Taishin say, "What is your name?" Futian's heart began to beat faster. He told himself that he had been a little bit too careless. Lord Taishin was such a powerful figure, and his perception was so sharp. He had looked at the character through the eyes of meditation, and Lord Taishin had obviously been able to sense that. He rose and bowed, saying, "Greetings, my lord. My name is Shinjing." "Please sit, Shinjing," said Lord Taishin. "What did you see?" Many people looked at Futian. They had no idea why Lord Taishin was asking Futian this. Perhaps he had just randomly chosen someone from the crowd. Futian was silent for a time. He did not know if he should speak or not. Seeing that he was silent, everyone's expressions changed. The house master of Taishin said, "Master, Shinjing is a Guqin master that I brought up to Taishan Mountain. This character is profound and mysterious. How could he possibly answer you?" "That does not matter. You may answer freely." Lord Taishin seemed extremely kind and gentle as he looked at Futian. "I see the way," answered Futian with a bow. As he said this, a strange look came over everyone's faces. Some of them even frowned. Would he really give such a simple answer? If he did not know, then he could just say that he did not know. The Lord had just randomly picked him, and he would not blame him if he got it wrong. Everyone could see that the character read the way. Everyone had already answered that. Lord Taishin had asked them what else they had seen. But Futian had still answered that he saw the way. But as they were all thinking this, Lord Taishin asked another question, "What way?" This made a look of surprise come over everyone's faces. Lord Taishin had asked him another question. "The way of swordsmanship," answered Futian. Everyone was speechless when they heard this. Had he seen the way of swordsmanship? "Do not say such foolish things." Futian heard a voice in his mind. Someone was transmitting to him. It was Princess Luoyue. Although Lord Taishin would not mind, if Futian spoke foolishly, it would still be bad. It would affect the people of Taishan Mountain's opinion of him. In that case, it would have negative effects on his future cultivating at Taishan Mountain, and it would not be easy for him to find a chance to become a disciple. Futian had unknowingly helped her, and so she took the time to remind him of this. However, Futian seemed not to hear her reminder. He sat there quietly, looking very calm as if he was not distressed in the least. If Lord Taishin had casually chosen to ask him a question, then he would answer him casually. Lord Taishin nodded, then turned his gaze away from Futian. He did not say whether he was right or wrong, but everyone could see that his questioning was over. Lord Taishin would not delve any deeper into Futian's answer. After all, he had just been asking casually. At that moment, an aura bloomed from the character and flowed through the area. In a flash, the giant character became extraordinary as an invisible will covered Taishan Mountain. At that moment, it seemed as if the only thing that anyone could see was the character. How about now? What do you see? Lord Taishin asked everyone. Will, everyone answered. They all felt an incredibly powerful will that seemed to contain the will of the great path within it. This character was indeed supernatural. Lord Taishin nodded slightly and waved his hand again. The character floated up, and divine light shone from it, spreading down Taishin Mountain. The clouds in the sky changed color, and the will of all things became exceedingly clear. The light shone upon all of Taishin City. At that moment, countless people in Taishin City looked up to Mount Taishin, trembling within their hearts as they did so. As the light of the great path shone, they seemed to be able to see a character that read the way, and an old man who was as graceful and elegant as a celestial being. Lord Taishin. In that instant, they all bowed, showing their respect to that figure. Inside themselves, they were in turmoil. Was Lord Taishin teaching the way? Countless saint-level figures were sitting there, diligently sensing everything. Lord Taishin was transmitting the way into Taishin City, letting them all feel that the way was everywhere. The people on Taishin Mountain could feel it the most clearly. They seemed to be able to see everything in the world. The true fire of the sun fell, and water flowed to the deep places of the earth. Invisible space was everywhere. They saw flowers blooming and dying, and they saw demonic beasts riding the winds high up in the sky. They could feel the wind flowing around them. This is the great path of all things. Everyone's hearts trembled. At that moment, their perception of everything became incomparably clear. It seemed as if they could see through things to their true nature. How about now? Lord Taishin asked again. Everyone was still silent, but they were shaking. In that instant, an even more powerful aura spread out. Lord Taishuan's form seemed not to be real. A phantom appeared up in the sky, and soon, it was everywhere at once. The character that read the way was linking everything together. At that moment, the marvelous will expanded even more. It spread out from the vast Taishin City all throughout the Taishin region. In the distance, the people of Taishin City were looking up into the sky, and their hearts were trembling wildly. Was this the aura of a god? Everything in the world became clearer. The people in Taishin saw countless images. They were images of everything in the world. What is the way? Lord Taishin was no longer asking what everyone saw. He was asking what the way was. No one lights the sun and the moon, and yet they burn brightly. No one arranges the stars, and yet they are well ordered. No one creates beasts, and yet they are born. No one stirs up the wind, and yet it blows. No one pushes the waters, and yet they flow. No one plants the trees and grass, and yet they grow. You do not try to breathe, and yet you do. You do not make your heart beat, and yet it does. Lord Taishin seemed to be speaking to himself. Everything in the world is born into something, or into nothing. Everything in the world has its reasons for moving. We humans cultivate the way in order to chase after these rules. However, the higher the level you cultivate to, the more you feel your own insignificance. Saints feel like they have grasped the way, but they have only touched one corner of it. Seeing some of these rules and operations is called understanding the way, and is called sainthood. Everyone on Taishin Mountain who heard these words felt a little ashamed, especially those who were proud and thought of themselves as cultivators. At that moment, they truly felt their own insignificance. Cultivation is hard. Becoming a saint is very hard, and becoming a renhuang is even harder. But although I say it is hard, at the same time, it is not hard. When you understand the way and understand the motions of the sun and the moon, then you will shine along with them. When you understand the motions of the stars, you will move along with them. But are the sun and moon and stars and everything in the world well ordered? If they are not ordered, how can you understand their changes? Although the way is but one word, it is incredibly difficult to see through. Lord Taishin sighed, and his sigh seemed to cause the sun, moon, and stars to move. He stood up and waved his hand, leaving a deep impression on the peak of Taishin Mountain. Far away in Taishin City, countless people could still see the character. My lord! Everyone's hearts were trembling. Master! Even Lord Taishuan's 4 disciples looked shocked as they looked at him. Is the master going to break through to the next level? Said the head teacher of Taishin. Suddenly, everyone's hearts beat even faster. If Lord Taishin was going to break through to the next level, what level would that be? That's out of the question. It is just that in these past few years of cultivation, I have had a feeling. I am teaching the way today for the sake of teaching it to you, but at the same time, I am teaching myself, said Lord Taishin. I must spend a period of time locked away in cultivation. I will stay here on Taishin Mountain and guard it for you, master, said the head teacher. The other 3 stood as well and bowed. They would all stay on the mountain and guard it for him. Lord Taishin nodded slightly, then turned to leave. With a single step, he disappeared. Everyone on Taishin Mountain was still looking at the character that read, "The Way." The character contained the actual will of the Great Path. And it was not only the people on Taishin Mountain who were looking at it. In Taishin City and all throughout the Taishin region, everyone was looking across the vast distance towards the mountain. The character filled all their visions. Let us go to Taishin Mountain, they all thought. They all made their preparations to set out for the mountain. At that moment, as far away from Taishin Mountain as could be, in an elegant hall in Shangxiao Divine Palace, a figure opened his eyes. His gaze seemed to pierce across the vast distance. Lord Taishin, he whispered. And it was not only in Shangxiao Divine Palace. At that moment, many people in the higher heavens realm felt something. They all immediately set out towards Taishin Mountain. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The whole Taishin region was shaken. None of them knew what had happened, but when they looked up, they could see a character that read, "The Way," flashing in their eyes. The whole Taishin region was shaken. None of them knew what had happened, but when they looked up, they could see a character that read, "The Way," flashing in their eyes. Something incredibly important must have happened on Taishin Mountain. Countless cultivators headed over there. Within Taishin City, cultivators were walking towards the mountain from all directions as quickly as they could. They flew on the wind and rode on swords, their hearts trembling fiercely. Those few Renhuang-level figures among them were even more disturbed. They could faintly feel that Lord Taishin was possibly about to enter a new level. Once he did this, the whole higher heavens realm would be shaken. Of course, the most shocked were still the cultivators upon Taishin Mountain. Lord Taishin had said that he would lock himself away in cultivation. The head teacher of Taishin Mountain, speaking for the 4 great disciples, had said that they would guard Taishin Mountain for him. What did this mean? All the disciples felt their hearts beating quickly. Even Yi Futian felt his heart fluttering. Lord Taishin was already at the very peak of the Renhuang level, yet there was still more for him to learn. If he broke through to a new level, would that be the level that Gu Tianxing had broken through to all those years ago? The people of the higher heavens realm did not know either. But after Gu Tianxing, no one in the Heavenly Mandate dynasty had reached that level. It was said that the old dynasty overlord had possibly been close to or had even reached that level, but that he had been slain by Gu Tianxing in battle and had grievously wounded Gu Tianxing at the same time. After these 2 great figures fell, the Heavenly Mandate dynasty never again had any figures at their level. The current dynasty overlord of the Heavenly Mandate dynasty and the Lady of Brahma's pure sky had not reached this level yet. Yi Futian could only imagine what would happen when Lord Taishin reached this level. He looked at the floating character, and his gaze seemed to fall deep into it. Just this single character was enough to make them understand. This was truly how to teach the way. The city lord of Taishin looked behind him at everyone and said, "All of you cultivate on your own in order to understand this." Then the 4 disciples walked away towards where Lord Taishin was shut away. Everyone else was left there looking at the character. They were unable to calm the storm raging inside all of them. Is Lord Taishin going to break through to the next level? Someone asked. Very possibly. He might just make it to a new level, someone answered. He is already at the very peak of his current level. Everyone nodded. Given Lord Taishuan's current level, he could only look up. Xinjing, did you truly see the way of swordsmanship before? Someone asked Yi Futian. It was Wan Shuyi, a disciple of Sword Abyss. Previously, he had not seen anything in particular. The character contained all the myriad things in the world and all the laws of motions of the earth. Thus, any answer that he could have given would have been fine. Now, it seemed like Yi Futian had said that the way of swordsmanship was the right answer. His heart was set on swords, and so he had seen the way of swordsmanship. Before, most people had ignored his answer, but now it seemed like they were having second thoughts. Could it be that this Guqin master, who had been brought up to Taishin Mountain by fourth sister, was also an incredibly talented swordsman and had seen a strand of sword will within the character? These days, I have been observing the swordsmanship of Sword Abyss, seeing how skilled its cultivators are, and this has been imprinted in my mind. Thus, when I looked at the character, I seemed to see some sword will, said Yi Futian. Wan Shuyi nodded. Yi Futian's answer seemed reasonable enough. He knew that Yi Futian had indeed been spending a lot of time at Sword Abyss. He went there to observe every day. He had probably watched them so much that he had swords on the brain. The others all relaxed. If this were the case, they could understand what had happened. Even if that is so, why did the cultivators of Sword Abyss not see swords? Someone asked at that moment. This made them all go pale. They turned to look at who had spoken. Jun Mu. Many people looked surprised when they saw him. He was the head teacher of Taishuan's disciple, Jun Mu. When Yi Futian had first come up Taishin Mountain, Jun Mu had left an impression on him the first time he saw him. Do you remember me, Brother Shin? Jun Mu walked up to Yi Futian and smiled. Yi Futian nodded. How could I forget such a memorable figure? So, it must have been fate that I saw you coming up to Taishin Mountain, said Jun Mu with a smile. Fourth uncle brought you up to Taishin Mountain, and Elder Lan let you enter String Palace. Now, third brother has returned, and you are still cultivating in String Palace. Apparently, you are worthy of third brother's favor. Now, you were able to see the way of swordsmanship within that character. Why should you be so modest? I think that you must be outstanding in some way, and you have just been humble and restrained. Jun Mu's words made everyone look back at Yi Futian. Could it be that he had been downplaying his own abilities? If so, then he was incredibly clever. You are exaggerating, Brother Jun. All of the disciples of Taishin Mountain are incredible. Thus, I must be humble and restrained while I am here. Moreover, I have no right to boast. Fourth sister brought me here and has been very good to me, and so I must concentrate on cultivation. Yi Futian was neither haughty nor humble. He simply and calmly answered Jun Mu. Well, now you have been cultivating on Taishin Mountain for a while. Have you had any success? Asked Jun Mu. I have benefited greatly from my time here, said Yi Futian with a nod. I once said that if I got the chance, I would like to enjoy your music. I wonder if I might take this opportunity to listen to you play. Jun Mu had been smiling all along, but everyone could feel a different sort of atmosphere. Some of the older folks understood what was going on, but the younger people were not clear on why Jun Mu was being this way. It seemed that he wanted to make Xinjing do something. But what was it that he wanted to see? Did he want to see if he was strong, or if he was weak? All the disciples of Taishin Mountain heard Lord Taishin teach the way today. I was fortunate enough to be here as well, and so my heart is full. How could I dare to play a song here on Taishin Mountain now? Everyone would laugh at me, said Yi Futian with a slight bow. Farewell. Will you really be so disrespectful to me? Said Jun Mu coldly. An invisible pressure spread out from him and fell upon Yi Futian. I must ask you to satisfy my curiosity once again. Yi Futian felt the pressure falling upon him and said, Lord Taishin is shut away, and the 4 elders have gone to guard him. I am very grateful to fourth sister for bringing me here to cultivate, but I am just a Guqin master of String Palace. I would not dare fight the disciple of the head teacher of Taishan. If you insist on fighting me, I will be ashamed of my own inadequacy, and yet I will have to bear it." Everyone looked surprised. This Shenjing was very frank. He would not fight back, but given how powerful Junmu was, fighting back would be meaningless anyway. "Junmu, why are you antagonizing Shenjing?" asked Wan Shui. "If you want to test yourself, there are many disciples here on Taishan Mountain. Why have you sought out Shenjing?" said Princess Luyue. She was a little bit upset. She kind of knew why Junmu was putting pressure on Yi Futian. Now that the elders were occupied, the disciples could do what they wanted. Junmu smiled slightly when he heard what they were all saying. He bowed to Yi Futian and said, "Forgive my rudeness." As he said this, his aura dissipated. He turned and sat down, his gaze fixed upon the character that read, "The Way." "Why don't you go, Shenjing?" said Wan Shui to Yi Futian. Princess Luyue looked at him as well. Yi Futian nodded. "Farewell," he said with a bow, and then turned and left. Junmu had tried to force him into a fight, but his heart was as calm as still water. He was not distressed at all. He still remembered his identity. At Taishan Mountain, he was just a Guqin master. How could he fight one of the disciples of the head teacher of Taishan? What would he do if he won? When he returned to String Palace, Yi Futian looked back up at the character that floated high above Taishan Mountain. However, at that moment, a figure appeared beside him. It was Little Phoenix. She looked at Yi Futian and said, "Why did you yield?" Although she often quarreled with Yi Futian, she and he had become very familiar with each other after spending so much time together. She knew how talented he was. He had been successful in cultivating the 6 famous songs and the fleeting divine sword. How many people on Taishan Mountain could say the same? Yi Futian smiled and said, "Are you worried for me?" Little Phoenix looked at him with disdain and said, "I've just never seen you be so cowardly." Yi Futian laughed and shook his head. "Little Phoenix, your personality is terrible, but you have a good heart. Your parents are a little fierce, but they have never been that way to me. And String Emperor and Fourth Sister have been so good to me. Why should I have gotten into a fight over such a trivial matter? That would just be giving in to my personal feelings." Today was the first time he had seen Lord Taishan, and he had met with String Emperor only a few times and had talked with him very little. And it was the same with Fourth Sister. But he was still grateful for the way they had treated him. Compared to that, the affair with Junmu was not even worth mentioning. "All right, I am going to cultivate." Yi Futian sat cross-legged and looked up at the huge character. The process of freedom meditation began, and his eyes became incomparably deep as his gaze pierced through the air towards the character. At that moment, Yi Futian could faintly feel his soul leaving his body. It entered into the realm of the way that floated in the air. A voice appeared in Yi Futian's head. All things are either born into something or into nothingness. No matter whether or not you could feel it, the way was there. It was everywhere. Yi Futian seemed to be able to feel the ordered sequence of everything in the world from that character. His will stretched out continuously into the distance. He saw all of Taishan Mountain and then continued downwards. He saw countless figures heading towards the mountain, as well as the chaos within the mountain. On New Year's Day of the 10,031st year of the Divine Prefecture calendar, countless figures had gathered below Taishan Mountain. This had led to a huge disturbance within Taishan City. Many of the people there were powerful figures, including some of the top figures of the higher heavens realm. On the first day of the year, an invitation came down from Taishan Mountain. All the people from the top forces were invited up onto the mountain to meet with Lord Taishan. Lord Taishuan's 4 disciples were standing outside Taishan Palace and looking over the invitations. The signature on each of these invitations was enough to cause a sensation throughout the higher heavens realm. "Why have you done this, brother?" said the city lord of Taishan to the head teacher. At that moment, the great figures of the realm were handing them their invitations. If they ignored them, it would be impolite. "Our friends have come from far away. How can we be impolite to them?" said the head teacher. "We must invite them up the mountain and set up a feast for them." "Won't this disturb our master's cultivation?" asked the city lord of Taishan. I agree with our brother. Since these people are here, why don't we invite them to come up the mountain? Said String Emperor. The city lord of Taishan glanced at him but did not reply immediately. In that case, I will go and make arrangements, said the city lord of Taishan after a while. Then he turned and left. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. On the first day of the 10,031st year of the Divine Prefecture calendar, the usually very peaceful Taishan mountain shook all of the higher heavens realm. On the first day of the 10,031st year of the Divine Prefecture calendar, the usually very peaceful Taishan mountain shook all of the higher heavens realm. It was announced that everyone who had come could go up the mountain. For a time, countless cultivators were climbing the mountain. Taishan mountain was vast, so even though they had come from all directions, it was still not too crowded. Most of the people who had come were from the Taishan region. They had come with a desire to advance towards sainthood. After all, this was the holy land of the Taishan region. Moreover, Lord Taishan was shut away, cultivating, trying to break through to the next level. Was it possible that he could do this? And if he did, what would happen? Would Lord Taishan start a whole new school of thought? Shangxiao Divine Palace was, without a doubt, the most influential force in the higher heavens realm, as they had countless powerful figures and taught people from all over the world, so they had trained countless heroes. Many of the top families would send their younger members to Shangxiao Divine Palace to cultivate, and even some people from other realms would make the journey here, sending their younger members to seek the path. Thus, when talking about influence, Shangxiao Divine Palace was certainly worthy of being called the most influential force in the higher heavens realm. In addition to them, several other forces stood at the peak. Compared to them, Taishan Mountain was not so brilliant, even though Lord Taishan was so powerful. The Taishan region was not that big. This was because Lord Taishan had not set up his own school of thought. He had only taken 4 disciples. And it was only because his own disciple, the Taishan Hierophant, had set up his own school that the Taishan region had expanded at all. Many of the cultivators in the Taishan region had thoughts about this situation. They hoped that Lord Taishuan's influence would increase and that he would take on more disciples, giving them a chance to go to Taishan Mountain to cultivate. Now, if Lord Taishan had a chance to advance a step, his influence would certainly increase. This would shake the higher heavens realm. If he started his own school of thought, then cultivators would flock to him. That was obvious from what was happening now. Countless people looked up at the character that read, "The Way," floating above Mount Taishan. They seemed to be able to see the way of all things. It was an incredibly magical feeling, which was enough to make them stare in wonder for a long time. But right now, Taishan Mountain was not a good place for cultivating. Too many cultivators had come. At that moment, everyone saw a group of figures coming forward. It was Lord Taishuan's 3 disciples besides the Taishan Hierophant. The city lord of Taishan was at the forefront. They walked towards a group of figures with powerful auras. One could tell how extraordinary they were at a glance. "The people from the Divine Palace," someone whispered. He recognized who this group was. Some of the great figures of the Divine Palace had come here to Taishan Mountain along with their disciples. It seemed that Lord Taishuan's actions had truly shaken the higher heavens realm. "Greetings, Lord of the Divine Music Palace," said the city lord of Taishan with a slight bow. The old man who was in charge of the Divine Palace had deep eyes and wore a silver robe. He truly looked like he was the palace lord of the Divine Music Palace. "No need to be so polite," said the palace lord of the Divine Music Palace. His tone was cool. Although he said that there was no need to be so polite, he accepted the politeness quite naturally. After all, it was due to his station. "How is Lord Taishuan's cultivation going?" he asked. This was the question on everyone's mind. Had Lord Taishan broken through to the next level? Right now, he is locked away. Our brother is guarding him. "We are not sure how his cultivation is going at this moment," answered the city lord of Taishan. "We have prepared a feast on Taishan Mountain. Please come with us." On saying this, the city lord of Taishan led the way. The palace lord of Divine Music Palace followed behind him with all his disciples. Afterward, the cultivators of many top forces arrived one after another. The city lord of Taishin greeted them all politely. At that moment, a powerful aura spread through the air. Everyone looked up and saw golden light falling, brilliant to the extreme. They all covered their eyes with their hands, leaving only cracks so they could look up into the sky. A group of brilliant figures was descending amidst the dazzling light. The divine nation. Everyone's hearts trembled when they saw these figures. Even people from powerful families were stunned. There was an incredibly old family in the eastern part of the higher heavens realm who called themselves descendants of the gods. Golden blood flowed through their veins, and they were full of so much vitality that it was said that they could not die, and their bodies could not be destroyed. They had founded an ancient nation in the east, the Golden Divine Nation. The Golden Divine Nation was the absolute overlord of the eastern portion of the higher heavens realm. Their power was beyond compare. But the people who had come were not the rulers of the Divine Nation, just some of the top figures. They were the divine generals of the Divine Nation. According to rumors, there was another top figure of the Divine Nation who was a general under Donghuang the Great of the Divine Prefecture. The Divine Nation had gone to war on Donghuang the Great's behalf and had achieved great victories. Now they had treasures that had been gifted to them by Donghuang himself, which made the Divine Nation a force to be reckoned with. They were truly awe-inspiring. The crowd parted to let them pass. The cultivators of the Golden Divine Nation stepped forward, and the city lord of Taishin and the others rose to greet them. They were a little bit distressed by this. They had not thought that Lord Taishin locking himself away would have caused such a stir that top forces like Shangxiao Divine Palace and the Golden Divine Nation would come here. "Where is Lord Taishin?" came an overpowering voice. Everyone on Mount Taishin frowned and looked towards where the voice had come from. They saw a group of figures in black robes coming towards them. All of them had incredibly imposing demeanor, and their bodies were surrounded by fierce auras. This was especially true of the man at their head. An overwhelming sense of power covered him from head to toe. The city lord of Taishin and the others all watched them, and their expressions changed slightly. So, they had come as well. The Luo family of the divine capital of Xiling. All the cultivators on Taishin Mountain were shaken. Another top force had arrived, and it was the prince of the divine capital of Xiling himself, Luo Chongyang, who had come personally. The prince of the divine capital of Xiling had been cultivating for many years and was very powerful. Although he was only a prince, he was still a top figure. Plus, his father was old Demon Luo. The two of them were absolutely dominant, and no one dared question their majesty. The Luo family of the divine capital of Xiling controlled a vast area. Old Demon Luo was not there, and no one knew if he was coming or not. But Luo Chongyang was there, and that was enough to make people take notice. No wonder he had dared to directly ask where Lord Taishin was as soon as he arrived. This was Luo Chongyang, and there was nothing strange about that. "I am Luo Chongyang of the divine capital of Xiling. I have heard that Lord Taishin is teaching the way, and I have come to pay a visit to him," he said clearly. His voice was very loud, and it rang throughout Mount Taishin, making a look of surprise come over everyone's face. The people of the Taishin region were a bit upset. Was he trying to disturb Lord Taishuan's cultivation? But he was Luo Chongyang, so they did not dare say anything against him. "Luo Chongyang, if you are going to be so rude, then get off the mountain," came a voice from a distance. Everyone looked to where it had come from and saw a figure emerge from the depths of Taishin Mountain. It was the Taishin Hierophant. His aura was overpowering as he walked towards Luo Chongyang with a cold expression. "You are mighty indeed, Hierophant," said Luo Chongyang with a bright and honest smile. "I have come to visit Lord Taishin. Am I not welcome? He is shut away cultivating right now. If you have come to visit him, you will have to wait quietly." "My brothers will attend to you," said the Taishin Hierophant coldly. "How long until he comes out?" asked Luo Chongyang. "I don't know," said the Taishin Hierophant. "How long will I have to wait? If Lord Taishin is going to break the shackles of orthodoxy, why wouldn't he want the people of the world to witness it and admire his magnificence?" Luo Chongyang had obviously not just come to pay a visit to Lord Taishin. The Luo family of the divine capital of Xiling did not have a friendly relationship with Taishin Mountain. Now, Lord Taishan was possibly about to break through to the next level, and it was natural that they would be worried about this. Luo Chongyang had probably come to Taishan Mountain to make trouble. He wanted to disrupt Lord Taishan, thereby preventing him from breaking through to the next level. That is for Lord Taishan to decide, Luo Chongyang, not for you, said the Taishan Hierophant coldly. At that moment, all the people on Taishan Mountain could see that Luo Chongyang had come for a nefarious purpose. Indeed, said Luo Chongyang with a smile. He looked up at the giant character that read, The Way, and said, Lord Taishan is clearly at a higher level than any of us. He carved a character into Taishan Mountain and taught the way to all of these disciples. He must have created many powerful figures today. I did not come to disturb him, but I would be so bored just sitting here. I always need to have something to do. You all go and test how powerful the disciples of Taishan Mountain are. Make sure to seek out their advice and see your own flaws. As you command, my prince. As he said this, the figures behind him stepped forward towards the disciples of Taishan Mountain. This made the people who had come from around the Taishan region look a little worried. Luo Chongyang had indeed come to make trouble, there was no question of it. He had directly asked the people he had brought with him from the divine capital of Xiling to get into fights. Nominally, they were just asking for advice, but in reality, they were going to provoke and challenge the people there to cause a disturbance. The powerful cultivators stepped forward, their mighty auras sweeping out. The people from the divine capital of Xiling were about to start fighting. They were worthy indeed of being old demon Luo's messengers. The disciples of Taishan Mountain all looked at the Taishan Hierophant and saw that his expression was cold. His robes flapped in the wind. His mighty aura bloomed, but Luo Chongyang just smiled at him. He looked like he was just waiting for him to attack. He had asked his juniors to challenge the disciples of Taishan Mountain. If a Renhuang-level figure attacked, he would naturally have to fight back. A battle between Renhuang-level figures could easily cause Taishan Mountain to collapse. Lord Taishuan's cultivation would be disrupted, and he would not break through to the next level. Boom! At that moment, the cultivators from the divine capital of Xiling launched their attacks. A dark death airflow flowed through the air, and overpowering demonic power swept out. Their attack power was overwhelming and carried fierce killing power with it. They were not holding anything back. They were not just testing themselves. I'm still waiting to see what you do, said the Taishan Hierophant coldly. Suddenly, all the saint-level cultivators of Taishan Mountain released their auras one by one and stepped forward. At that moment, a chaotic battle broke out on Taishan Mountain. At that time, Futian was still cultivating in String Palace. His will seemed to be immersed in the character, and he could feel the will of the Great Path. At the same time, he could naturally feel what was happening on Taishan Mountain. There were those who did not want Lord Taishan to break through to the next level, and so they had found an excuse to attack. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. A chaotic battle had broken out upon Taishan Mountain. A group of saint-level cultivators had begun fighting wildly. A chaotic battle had broken out upon Taishan Mountain. A group of saint-level cultivators had begun fighting wildly. The cultivators of the divine capital of Xiling had overwhelming attack power, and there was a sense of excitement about them. It seemed that they would not show any mercy. At that moment, at a certain place among all the chaos, a cultivator from the divine capital of Xiling stepped through the air. Demonic power rolled and broiled around him. An airflow of death surrounded him, and a demonic image floated behind him, which was frightening to behold. He struck out with his fist. His opponent brought his hands together to block him, but fist will pierced through his guard. A terrible dark airflow penetrated him. In a flash, countless dark airflows appeared upon the cultivator from Taishan Mountain. Death will was infecting his body. The people from Taishan Mountain all looked shocked. The cultivators from the divine capital of Xiling were not being polite in the least. A fist swept out, and there was a loud noise as the cultivator from Taishan Mountain's internal organs shook. His body was filled with deadly qi as he was sent flying back and landed on the ground. This is ruthless. The cultivators of Taishan Mountain began to look angry as they beheld this scene. The man stepped forward and thrust out his fist again, wounding the man in front of him. No one could stop him. He is the prince of the divine capital of Xiling, Luo Yuming. Someone had recognized the saint-level figure who was attacking. He was another one of the princes of the divine capital of Xiling. He was incredibly strong. At that moment, he walked towards Luo Yuming. He struck out, and his fist collided with Luo Yuming's. Just when everyone thought he would be sent flying backward, they saw that the figure was unmoved. Both of their wills burst forth, and the air around them seemed to be shattered. They stepped back at the same time. Jun Mu. The disciples of Taishan Mountain looked at the man who had stepped forward. It was the disciple of the Taishan Hierophant, Jun Mu. But his face had turned ugly after he had stepped back. Death currents were raging through him, infecting his vitality. Luo Yuming smiled at Jun Mu and said, "You'll do." On saying this, he stepped forward, and the two of them began to fight. While that was going on, other battles were breaking out all over the place, leaving the onlookers astonished. The cultivators of the divine capital of Xiling were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, but they pressed forward and took a commanding position on the battlefield. They had obviously prepared for this. One could see the disparity in power between the two sides, but there was nothing unusual about this. The divine capital of Xiling was a great power, and Lord Taishan had not founded his own school of thought. After the four great disciples had succeeded at making names for themselves, Taishan Mountain had no more figures who had the potential to become famous throughout the higher heavens realm. After all, Taishan Mountain was not that kind of holy land. In that respect, Shangxiao Divine Palace was naturally the strongest holy land. The Taishan Hierophant and the others watched the battle with dark looks on their faces. Their master was shut away, cultivating at the moment, and they had had a feeling that someone would come to make trouble. Thus, they had been left here to guard Taishan Mountain for him. And indeed, people had come. The divine capital of Xiling had come. Luo Chongyang had been staring at the Taishan Hierophant all along. It was as if he was waiting for him to act. He wanted to take on this great challenge. However, the Taishan Hierophant was quiet and contained his anger. Even as he saw many of the disciples of Taishan Mountain be wounded, he said nothing. He had a calm expression on his face. Lord Taishan personally taught them the way, yet the disciples of Taishan Mountain are nothing to write home about, Luo Chongyang said as he swept his gaze over the battlefield. There was a bit of disdain in his voice that made the disciples of Taishan Mountain feel humiliated. Wan Shuyi and the disciples of Sword Abyss pressed forward with their swords, cutting through the cultivators of the divine capital of Xiling like bamboo and wounding many of them. But a group of their opponents came forward. A hand swiped through the air, and in a flash, countless dark death currents pierced through the air like sharp swords, forming a terrifying death storm. A sword cut through the sky. Wan Shuyi's body became phantom-like as he cut among the cultivators of the divine capital of Xiling. Blood flowed from their bodies, and they were sent flying backward as they were wounded by his swordsmanship. At that moment, a massive demonic image appeared in front of him. Two massive demonic cultivator hands materialized, and in a flash, 3,000 death currents pierced through the sky towards Wan Shuyi. An afterimage of Wan Shuyi appeared as he shot forward. He slashed his sword, using the cleave of all things. He collided with his opponent and became tangled up with him. At the same time, the other cultivators of the divine cultivator of Xiling formed seals. The demonic seal of death descended from the sky, pressing down on the disciples of Sword Abyss. The disciples of Sword Abyss were scattered in an instant, and many of them were wounded. Luo Yue was on the battlefield as well. She was forced to retreat. One cultivator seemed to be staring at her. Countless death currents snaked through the air, covering her within them. She stood there holding her sword while shrieking all around her. The demonic cultivator from the divine capital of Xiling stared at her with a cold smile. He formed a seal with his hands, and suddenly, countless death currents shot out like swords towards her. Sword will swept through the sky as Luoyue's figure flashed. The images of thousands of swords appeared, and they collided with the death currents that were rushing towards her wildly. The fleeting divine sword, whispered the cultivator from the divine capital of Shilin. What an excellent sword method. Unfortunately, your swordsmanship still needs some work. As he said this, demonic power billowed up into the sky. He pointed down, and in a flash, the countless black death currents seemed to transform into deadly spears. They shot down towards Luo Yue wildly. She flung her sword away and used her now free hands to form a seal. Countless sword images appeared and spiraled upwards. Her attacks smashed into his, but in the end, her swordsmanship was overwhelmed, and Luo Yue was smashed down towards the ground. Finally, her sword returned to her hands. She gripped it, and sword light burned as a sword curtain spread out around her. Bang, bang, bang. The attacks continued to fall. She was forced further and further down. Finally, she groaned and her face turned pale. Boom. There was a loud noise as Luo Yue set foot on the ground, her face white as a sheet. Divine light bloomed as she summoned her sword life spirit. It melded with the sword in her hands, and a beam of divine radiance flashed. The sword cut through the air, and in a flash, everything in front of her was shattered. At the same time, blood was flowing from the corner of her mouth. The sword cut into the cultivator from the divine capital of Shilin, and his face quickly became very solemn. He stepped through the air, and demonic figures appeared, covering the sky. They tried to cover Luo Yue. Go! Luo Yue's sword cut through the air, shining brilliantly. But all the demon images attacked at once, and the deadly spears fell upon the sword as well. There were also overwhelming palm prints that made the sword stop in midair, shaking. Every time it shook, more blood flowed from Luo Yue's mouth, and her face grew paler and paler. Cold will bloomed from the city lord of Taishuan's body as he beheld this scene. His daughter was being attacked, and he was not about to just let that go. His power surged, but at the same time, a Renhuang-level figure from the divine capital of Shilin released his power as well. It seemed that if he got involved, the cultivator of the divine capital of Shilin would attack him immediately. Boom! There was a burst of incredibly sharp air that seemed impossible to suppress. It seemed that if his opponent dared to do anything, the city lord of Taishan would attack him as well. Within String Palace, Yi Futian's will seem to link up with the character that read the way. He could clearly see the battle on Taishan Mountain. Many of the disciples of Sword Abyss had been wounded, and Luo Yue was being suppressed. Taishan Mountain had no conflict with the outside world and did not train its disciples as part of a faction. But even though the tree may crave serenity, the wind would not stop. Just because they did not have any conflicts, did not mean that others did not have conflicts with them. He looked at the character on the peak of Taishan Mountain and could feel the great path of all things. He could feel the flow of the aura of all things between heaven and earth. At that moment, a sword appeared in his eyes. A sword seemed to appear within the giant character as well. The atmosphere on Taishan Mountain became very harsh. Everyone was watching Luo Yue's battle. The daughter of the city lord of Taishan seemed to have already been pushed to her limit. Blood stained her robes. However, her eyes were still filled with a cold determination. Sword will covered her until her body seemed to be made out of swords. She shot up into the sky, forming sword seals with her hands. Sword will shrieked through the air. It seemed that she would still fight. Sword will shot through the air above her. A terrible, harsh sword formed, and many other swords began to materialize. After the first sword, another came and then a third. In a flash, there were countless swords in the air above Luo Yue. What is going on? The city lord of Taishan was stunned. Those swords, it was not only him. Everyone else looked surprised as well. Luo Yue still had a trick up her sleeve? But surprisingly, a look of confusion came over Luo Yue's face as well. These were not the swords that she had summoned. Cut! She cried out and released her sword. But at the moment she yelled this, countless swords moved at the same time, forming a line as they cut through the air. The huge line of swords transformed into a worldly prison of swordsmanship. The cultivator from the Shangxiao Divine Palace looked surprised. He cried out, and demonic will billowed from him. The death currents transformed into spears and shot out. The spears were destroyed in an instant. Countless swords cut into the space where he was standing. It looked like countless crosses crashing into each other. The cleave of all things. It was the cleave of all things, the second strike of the fleeting divine sword, and it was perfect. It was the best possible interpretation of the strike. Even Wan Shuyi could not have displayed such a perfect cleave of all things. Was Luo Yue transforming in the middle of battle? There was a terrible cry as the cultivator of Shangxiao Divine Palace was pierced by countless cries. He was covered in blood, and his aura weakened. He seemed to have been completely crippled. He fell to the ground looking like he was in a daze. What a powerful sword! All the cultivators on Taishan Mountain were looking at Luo Yue. The city lord of Taishuan's daughter was really this outstanding? So why had she been losing earlier? Had she been hiding her power, or had she just made it to the next level? Some of the Renhuang level cultivators felt that something was not right, but none of them could say specifically what it was. They looked up at the character that read, "The Way." It seemed that a burst of power had put the character into motion, and it was resonating with heaven and earth, and sword will was spreading out from it. Had Luo Yue done this? What is going on? The city lord of Taishan had some doubts in his heart as well. This did not seem like a sword that Luo Yue could have summoned. And he was also having a mystical feeling. He looked at his daughter. She herself looked a little bit confused by all of this. She seemed very surprised by that sword. It was not hers. But the sword was truly powerful. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The cultivator from the divine capital of Xiling frowned slightly. Many of the fighters looked over to where Luo Yue was. Death will wrapped around the cultivator from the divine capital of Xiling. There was a cold look in his dark eyes. The cultivator from the divine capital of Xiling frowned slightly. Many of the fighters looked over to where Luo Yue was. Death will wrapped around the cultivator from the divine capital of Xiling. There was a cold look in his dark eyes. You truly are the daughter of Lord Taishuan's second disciple. What are you all looking at? Get back to fighting. When Luo Chongyang roared this, the other cultivators suddenly stepped forward towards where Luo Yue was. As she stood there, Luo Yue could feel an intense amount of pressure. Boom! Several of the cultivators stepped forward, and Luo Yue seemed to be able to feel the power of a god of death in the air. Invisible death will was spreading through her body, infecting her. But she saw that the powerful sword in the air above her was still circling. She formed a sword seal, and in a flash, a formless brilliance emitted from the giant character that read, "The Way," on the peak of Taishan Mountain. Sword will formed all around her until a terrifying storm of sword chi appeared. It swept through the sky. At that moment, Luo Yue realized that the person who had helped her was still there, helping her in secret. She did not hesitate. She gripped her sword and pointed it up into the sky. In a flash, countless divine swords whistled through the sky, leaving streaks in the air. Many of the cultivators of the divine capital of Xiling looked surprised. They released their powerful demonic will to block the onrushing sword will. The countless swords cut through the air. It seemed like the entire area would be shattered by the storm of sword chi. Crack, crack, crack. Lines of blood flew through the air, and many cultivators cried out bitterly. All of the cultivators who had been coming to attack Luo Yue had been grievously wounded. They were covered in blood and they fell limply to the ground. Luo Yue's battle had taken a lot of the pressure off the other disciples of Sword Abyss. Wan Shui looked at her in shock. He had cultivated the second strike of the fleeting divine sword, the cleave of all things, for many years and still did not fully understand it. Now, Luo Yue had used this technique. She must have reached a new level. Moreover, she had used the will of the worldly great path to resonate with the character that read, "The Way." This showed how prodigiously talented she was. When had Sister Luo Yue gotten so strong? Who is helping her secretly? Why can't I see you? Luo Chongyang swept his gaze over the giant character that read, "The Way." His expression was cold. Given his level, he was able to sense that this was not Luo Yue's sword. The daughter of the city lord of Taishan was just not that good. He sent some people to surround her. He wanted to see if the one who was secretly helping her would act again so he could pinpoint his location. But he discovered that the hiding person was using his will to interact with the character that read the way, floating at the peak of Taishan Mountain. He was unable to find out where the man was by using his spiritual will. Many people were cultivating on Taishan Mountain and had not come here. However, there was no one there at the nirvana level. They were all contemplating the character, and people who were below the nirvana level did not have the ability to do this. Even nirvana level figures would have trouble doing this. Thus, his level was not high enough to find the person. A look of surprise came over everyone's face when they heard Luo Chongyang's words. They were stunned. Was this really not Luo Yue's sword? Someone was helping her secretly. But who could produce such brilliant swordsmanship from a secret position? This was a sword that was able to use the second strike of the fleeting divine sword, the cleave of all things. Even Wan Shui could not do this. Didn't you want to test the power of the disciples of Taishan Mountain? Do they have to stand right in front of you for you to test their power? The Taishan Hierophant said to Luo Chongyang. He also did not know who it was, but it was not important. What was important was that they had gained a little bit of time. They had to fight for more time for their master. Time was extremely precious to Lord Taishan, who was about to break through to the next level. He naturally did not want Lord Taishan to be disturbed. Who knew that she had a Renhuang-level figure helping her? Said Luo Chongyang coldly. He looked up at the character that read, the way. He stretched out his hand, and in a flash, the sky darkened. A huge palm print appeared in the sky and slammed down into the character. Boom! There was a loud noise as all of Taishan Mountain trembled violently. The character that read, the way, was shattered. In that instant, all the people on Taishan Mountain could no longer feel its mystical will. All of the cultivators of Taishan Mountain looked coldly at Luo Chongyang. Old Demon Luo had always been overbearing and unreasonable, and now it seemed that Prince Luo Chongyang had inherited his temperament. He was just as overbearing. He had actually directly destroyed the character that Lord Taishan had carved. The Taishan Hierophant looked up at the peak of the mountain. At that moment, he realized that since his opponent wanted to make trouble, he would not delay for too long. No matter what, he would find an excuse to attack. The people from the divine capital of Xiling had come here to disturb Lord Taishan and make him unable to reach the next level. When you reached the Renhuang level, every time you tried to advance, you were making a gamble with heaven and earth. This was especially true of someone at the peak of the Renhuang level. They must have profound insight, and then they had to seize an opportunity to break their shackles. Once their concentration was broken, the way would be blocked, and there was a high probability that they would fail and would have no way to break through to the next level. The character that read, the way, was not only for the benefit of the people who had come here to cultivate. Lord Taishan had also carved it for himself. He had used the character to connect himself to the heavens and the earth and to help him understand things. Now, Luo Chongyang had raised his hand and destroyed it. Luo Chongyang, said the Taishan Hierophant coldly. That character was carved by our master. If you had come here as guests, we would have welcomed you, but you came here to cause trouble, so go on back to Xiling. He stepped forward as he said this. In a flash, mighty will press down all over the mountain, covering everyone within it, including both the disciples of Taishan Mountain and the cultivators of the divine capital of Xiling. It seemed that if Luo Chongyang did anything, he would be burying everyone else along with himself. Luo Chongyang allowed his aura to burst forth as well. He stood there like a god of death. He looked at the Taishan Hierophant with his black eyes. Taishan Mountain went dark, and death will wrapped around everyone. If any Renhuang-level figures acted, any saint-level figures would be about as useful in the fight as ants. If you want to fight, then fight. No need to inflict suffering on the innocent. The god of the golden divine nation released his dazzling golden radiance, covering himself and the cultivators of the golden divine nation. He had formed a golden light curtain. The palace lord of the divine music palace took a small step forward as well. The heavenly music of the great path rang out, protecting the disciples of the Shangxiao divine palace. An invisible storm of the great path swept through the air, terrible to the extreme. The saint-level cultivators there felt that they were insignificant in the face of its might. Many of the people regretted having come to Taishan Mountain. They should never have come here. Once the battle really started, the consequences would be too disastrous to imagine. The city lord of Taishan and String Emperor stepped out, and their might covered all of Taishan Mountain. It seemed like once their opponents started fighting, they would do whatever it took to defeat the cultivators from the divine capital of Xiling. But at that moment, they saw a cold light flash in Luo Chongyang's eyes, and he smiled. He seemed to be mocking them. Lord Taishan is your elder, and under his tutelage your cultivation has reached the heavens. I came here to pay a visit. How could I have come here by myself? Said Luo Chongyang coldly. As he said this, the Taishan Hierophant's expression changed a little bit, as did the others. In reality, the Taishan Hierophant had thought of this. His spiritual will covered all of Taishan Mountain, but he had not sensed old demon Luo. But there was a possibility that his level was just too high, and so he could not sense his existence. This isn't good. The Taishan Hierophant suddenly sensed a powerful danger. Although he still did not sense an aura, someone's incredibly high level still made him feel that indescribable threat. Indeed, at the moment that he felt this, a burst of terrible demonic power descended. A hand stretched down from the sky. It was a demonic palm print from the heavens, smashing into Taishan Palace at the peak of Taishan Mountain. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the palace at the top of Taishan Mountain was reduced to dust. In the next moment, everyone saw a demonic figure appear in the sky. It was the lord of the divine capital of Xiling, old demon Luo. I had heard that Lord Taishan was about to break through to the next level, and so I came to pay my respects, said old demon Luo, his voice shaking the heavens and the earth. The people of Taishan City could not help but tremble. Old demon Luo had come here himself just to stop Lord Taishan from breaking through to the next level. He had not hesitated to start a battle and destroy Taishan Palace. His determination was obvious. The divine capital of Xiling did not want to see Lord Taishan advance to the next level. My lord! The Taishan Hierophant and the others looked up. Everyone's gaze fell upon the ruined palace. Taishan Palace had stood at the peak of Taishan Mountain and had stood as a symbol for them. Now, it had been destroyed by old demon Luo. Amidst the ruins, a figure gradually opened his eyes. Lord Taishan was dressed in a simple robe, and his body was covered in dust, but this could not hide his elegance. The Taishan Hierophant and the others bowed. We were not strong enough to protect you. We let them disturb your cultivation. Old demon Luo of the divine capital of Xiling came. How could you have defended me? Lord Taishan answered indifferently. He obviously did not blame them. Old demon Luo was at his level and had brought his son Luo Chongyang. If his opponents wanted to forcibly disturb his cultivation, they would have had no way to stop them. Long time no see, Lord Taishan, said old demon Luo calmly, just like they were old friends. There was none of the fierceness from before. Lord Taishan nodded. Indeed. I have missed you all this time. At that moment, everyone in Taishan City felt a suffocating pressure. The two of them were talking casually, but they could feel an incredibly threatening atmosphere. The worldly great path flowed, and the weather changed. A brilliant light shone from Lord Taishuan's arms. It was sword light. At that moment, all of the vastness of the world seemed to shine with sword light. There were swords everywhere. Lord Taishan himself was suffused with brilliant light as if he was a sword himself. The third strike of the fleeting divine sword is fleeting swordsmanship. I see it clearly, said Lord Taishan. His voice rang out across Taishan Mountain. Everyone's faces became very solemn as they looked towards him. Was he talking to someone? Or was he speaking to all of the swordsmen on Taishan Mountain? The third strike of the fleeting divine sword was the most powerful, and it was the final one. Everyone was staring at him. As they watched him, he raised his arms and pointed at the sky. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. On Taishan Mountain, at this moment, it seemed that there was only Lord Taishan. On Taishan Mountain, at this moment, it seemed that there was only Lord Taishan. The moment his finger fell, the vast and endless space seemed to stand still. Everyone felt an inexplicable breath, and their thoughts seemed to have stopped. Between heaven and earth, there was only that one sword. As this sword was unleashed, the sky glimmered, and the figure of Lord Taishen became illusory. While he seemed to be in the same place, his actual body had appeared in front of old Demon Luo. That finger, a sword, pierced through the sky. When Lord Taishen made his move, old Demon Luo had already sensed it. The demonic might on his body exploded instantly, sending pressure across thousands of miles of mountains and rivers. The sky turned to darkness, pitch black. His palms slammed down without any hesitation, colliding with that sword. In an instant, the world was dimmed and dull. Darkness fell in front of many people's eyes, and they felt that death had descended. But in the darkened sky, an incredibly bright sword light pierced through the sky, and the divine light penetrated from old Demon Luo's body, reaching directly above the sky dome. In the next moment, the endless divine light of swordsmanship pierced the darkness, causing the light to shine through. Old Demon Luo's body drowned in the sword light, awash like the water, and old Demon Luo's body seemed to turn elusive. All the will of the way was broken. Under this ultimate attack, time seemed to stand still. The crowd seemed to witness the struggle of old Demon Luo. Up and down Taishan Mountain, even the people of the entire Taishan city felt the power of this blow. Countless ideas came into their heads, but in fact, it was perhaps only for a moment. Buzz. The divine light sailed across. The crowd saw a sword stab at the sky. Countless divine swords pierced the darkness, and the demonic might roiled non-stop. Old Demon Luo's body shot straight above the sky dome and gradually faded until it disappeared. However, soon, a face appeared in the sky. It was old Demon Luo's face. At this time, the face was somewhat distorted. Its eyes were extremely cold. Many did not even dare to look at those eyes. It was as if they would fall into them. You broke through. Old Demon Luo's voice was gloomy. Lord Taishin didn't answer his question. His eyes swept up to the place above the sky. He said, "Divine capital of Shilin put in such a great effort because you didn't want to see me break through?" He had the disciples provoke disputes, and the crown prince of the divine capital of Shilin, Luo Chongyong, pinned down several of his disciples. At the same time, old Demon Luo attempted to destroy Taishan Palace. This was not only just to interrupt his cultivation, but to possibly injure him severely, completely stopping any hope of him making a breakthrough. As a major demonic figure of Shilin, old Demon Luo was ruthless and vicious. He showed absolutely no mercy. Just want to take a look at your present state. Now that I have seen it, divine capital of Shilin will bid our goodbyes, old Demon Luo said. Suddenly, Luo Chongyang and the others were eager to retreat. He could see that one sword strike just now had already injured his father. Lord Taishin had wounded his father with one blow, which showed that there was another breakthrough in his realm. Taishin Mountain clearly was not a place for him to tarry any longer. Do you think you can come and go as you please? Lord Taishin said as he waved his hand toward the void. A huge character of the way appeared suddenly, hanging high above the sky. Luo Chongyang, previously, when you destroyed my character of the way, I didn't pursue the matter on account of your junior status. Now, walk out of this character on your own. You are not allowed to use power of any kind, Lord Taishin said to Luo Chongyang. Luo Chongyang's expression suddenly stiffened as he glanced at the word. At this moment, the power of the character was even more tyrannical and contained a terrible power of destruction. His face was sullen as he glanced at Lord Taishin. Eventually, he stepped into the void and walked toward that character, actually entering right into it. Infinite sword will condensed and manifested from the character of the way, tearing at Luo Chongyang's body. He seemed to be suffering under a terrible might of the way. His surroundings were distorted, and his body seemed to be pierced by infinite divine swords of the great path. Blood dripped from him. Every drop of blood contained the horrible will of the way. Luo Chongyang's hair, disheveled, was flying in the wind. His body seemed to have stepped into the swordsmanship of Lord Taishin. Although Lord Taishin stood below, the character seemed to be one with his mind, emitting sharp, scraping sounds. Luo Chongyang walked through it step by step, and when he passed through the character completely, his body was covered in blood. The wild breath above his body was also floating. "What does my lord think?" Luo Chongyang asked Lord Taixin. Everyone who witnessed this scene below was trembling. Luo Chongyang had suffered such humiliation, but old demon Luo did not come out. It was obvious that the old demon must be injured so that he did not intervene, allowing Luo Chongyang to suffer such disgrace. Just how strong was Lord Taixin at this moment? Had Lord Taixin really made a breakthrough? Some prominent figures, such as the Palace Lord of Divine Music Palace and the Divine General of the Golden Divine Nation, fixed their attention on Lord Taixin. The strength of old demon Luo was well known to them, but now old demon Luo not only failed in the sneak attacks but was also wounded by Lord Taixin. It was obvious that Lord Taixin had grown more fearsome than before. The position of Taishin Mountain in the higher heavens realm would change again. We have finished with the matter of you destroying the character of the Way. Next, since the disciples of the divine capital of Xiling wanted to spar with the disciples of Taishin Mountain, and you were the one who forcibly interrupted the whole affair, the discussion is not yet over. Let's continue with the exchange, Lord Taishin said again, intending to deal with each and every one of the transgressions. First, it was old demon Luo, then it was Luo Chongyang, and finally, it would be those disciples of the divine capital of Xiling who came to pick a fight. Moreover, he even re-added the character and re-engraved it in the void. Was it to allow those who had made their moves before to continue leveraging its power? The disciples of the divine capital of Xiling were no longer aching to fight. Their king of the divine capital, old demon Luo, was defeated, and the crown prince Luo Chongyang was forced to walk through the character of the Way. It could be said that they had completely failed, having been unable to effect Lord Taishuan's breakthrough. What was the point of continuing to fight? Disciples of Taishin Mountain, on the other hand, looked rather sharp. At this time, Yi Futian still sat in the string pavilion. He looked at the character of the Way and resonated with it. There were some waves in his heart. The sword strike that was previously unleashed by Lord Taishin was too profound. The fleeing divine sword. With one strike, yin and yang were thrown into pandemonium, causing the passage of time, which was destroyed. One point of the finger was one strike, and one strike caused the fleeting passage of time. Such a strike, even at his utmost, was impossible to comprehend fully. He had only observed the magnificence of the fleeting divine sword and was perceiving what kind of technique it was. Now, was Lord Taishin reminding him to continue fighting? Although the advantage was entirely theirs, it was still really difficult for the disciples of Taishin Mountain to defeat the disciples of the divine capital of Xiling. Therefore, Lord Taishin may still allow him to continue to strike back. When his thoughts turned to this, Yi Futian's mind moved, and in an instant, in the land above Luoyue, the sword will whistled as if calling her. Luoyue revealed a strange look. Was the sword looking for her? This was clearly wanting to use her for the strike. It was as if it was really her sword. Luoyue had no words but still cooperated. Her palms were outstretched, and a sword was born, clamoring in the void. With the vast sky, the light of countless divine swords was whistling this way, surrounding her sword. The sword chi turned destructive, leaving sword marks between the sky and earth. Go! Luoyue pointed her finger through the air. Although the others were making their move, it did not prevent her from controlling her sword. But the other swords also followed hers, cutting at the disciples of the divine capital of Xiling who were in the void. The second level of the technique, cleave of all things, though not as powerful, was equally terrifying. Countless blood splattered, and many of the disciples of the divine capital of Xiling were pale as they were bleeding. There were even cultivators whose bodies were penetrated by the swords. The character of the Way resonates. Many on Taishin Mountain looked up at the character in the void, and they all felt the power of its resonance. It was as if this character was hidden within it. Therefore, it urged the terrible fight of swordsmanship on the battlefield. In a blink of an eye, almost all the cultivators from the divine capital of Xiling were injured by sword chi with varying degrees of injuries. A moment later, the whistling swords stopped. Those cultivators of the divine capital of Xiling, who were arrogant and overbearing when they arrived, now appeared exhausted and powerless. Take your people and get out of here. Next time, if you dare to come to Taishan Mountain like this again, don't blame me for being ruthless. Lord Taishan looked at Luo Chongyang and admonished him. Suddenly, Luo Chongyang hung his head and led his cronies away. Without any hint of anger, Luo Chongyang waved his hand and led the people from the divine capital of Shilling away from Taishan Mountain. Watching the disappearing figures in the void, everyone on Taishan Mountain felt strong feelings of emotion and shock. Lord, one after another, the voices called out as their eyes looked toward Lord Taishan. Did Lord Taishan make the breakthrough? Master! The 4 disciples of Lord Taishan also looked at their master because even they did not know if their master had broken through or not. Congratulations to Lord Taishan for great success this time, and the realm is deeper, the Palace Lord of Divine Music Palace said and bowed slightly to Lord Taishan. Congratulations to our Lord, others said one after the other. They bowed in the direction of Lord Taishan. That thought of those who cultivated on Taishan Mountain reappeared. Would the master establish a clan and pass on his teachings? Now that the master had stepped into another level, even prominent characters as powerful as old demon Luo could not withstand his attack. If Lord Taishan took this opportunity to establish his own clan, many superior cultivators would flock here, answering his call. When their thoughts turned to this, many in Taishan region were very much looking forward to the future. No need for the formalities. Lord Taishan waved his hand. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.